Hello there, my name is Kjetil, Lima Bravo for Foxtrot Hotel, and today I'm going to be building this little kit. This is from Radiostuff.com. We had Chris, who runs this out of his shed in the UK on the European Ham Radio Show a few weeks back. And he talked about, among other things, this Moxon antenna, and I decided to buy one. So this is not a sponsored video. So I just bought one off his web shop, and well, this is what I ended up with and my journey so far. In this video, which will be part 1, I'm going to build it. In part number 2, which I'll film tomorrow, hopefully, when it's a bit chillier outside, that will be the tuning part of it. Because there's quite a lot left to do it even after it looks like this. Trimming, tuning, and making sure it fits for 2 meters. So let me show you what's in the box, and then I'll show you how I built this antenna. And well, at the end I'll summarize what I think about the kit. So let's see what's in the box. This is how it arrived to me. Got it shipped to the UK and couriered over. So nicely wrapped up in a solid cardboard box. One bag of mystery gray stuff, and a PCB, nicely designed in the normal black and white colors, and it does have a QR code for instructions. 4 pieces of fiberglass rod. These are hollow tubes and seem really nice and sturdy. It's a small business card here, also with links to his webpage. And that's it. So let's tear into this here. Please cut along the dotted line. Okay. Let's see. There's more fiberglass. The bag here full of tiny things. So that was everything pretty much packed out, and let's see if we can get this assembled. So in this bag here, I did check, and all of these are ABS printed plastic, and it's a really nice print quality. This is product quality. Of course, it's not injection molded, but for a small production run, this is really nice. And there are some different parts here. If you scan the QR code, which is on here, there's instructions, and I got them rigged up here on my little tablet. And the instructions, they start out really nicely. They start out with a description on what the Moxon is, how it works, some of the theory and so on. And this is stuff I don't really know anything about. So really interesting to read. It's well written. It's not a very concise description. It's quite verbose when it comes to describing what to do, and it brings out quite a few terms and so on that you should know what. It won't explain you, for example, what the common mode choke is. And some people may laugh at that, but if you're a new ham, that kind of thing, although you have maybe had it in your exam and in your papers, it may be a very hard term to understand. And Chris is very clear, and was clear, that this is not a beginner's kit. I've been a ham for 10 years, so yes, I know quite a few of these terms, but I'm not an antenna specialist. So reading through here, I did learn quite a bit. Very helpful to do, and hopefully this will go quite well. Let's get everything sorted first, because, well, I can't build from this kind of pile of things. I want everything nicely sorted out. I'll speed this up. So the things I'm sorting out here, these ones are for holding the arms here, and there's 2 types of them. There's one of them which has a small end point here, and one that just goes straight through, so that you can easily limit it. And there's also some that will be used to hold the wire out on the antenna, or out on the end of them, and that's these ones as far as I can remember. It's been a few days since I read the instructions, so I'm gonna have to read through this as I go, and I may not cover all the steps, but Chris has detailed build videos on his page as well. But this is just a bit of fun. So this comes from having built way too much Lego. I always feel that I need to sort things in a good order. It doesn't have to be completely straight because it's all going to move again, but I do want it to be easy to find all the different parts. So that's there. Some more of these. I'm not sure if there are extra parts for these or not, but they should be pretty easy to cut up if you need new ones. Let's see, these are end caps, these black ones here, just to put on the end of the fiberglass pole so that you don't poke out somebody's eye with them, which is always a good thing to try to avoid. So there are 5 of these. There's a mix of black and white zip ties. I'm going to try to standardize on one color if I can. I'd also like them to be UV resistant, so I kind of usually go with the black ones if I can. But this is an antenna that is not going to be mounted permanently outdoors. There's a BNC connector in this one, and a bunch of screws and other things. I think this is standard M3, so I have plenty of those extra. Tiny bit of, I think it's RG178 coax, and some antenna wire. And yeah, that should be it. So let's get this open. I gotta find a way to saw over this fiberglass later as well. I think I have a suitable saw for that somewhere. If not, I'll get the Dremel out. Yeah, so there's a tiny bit of remains from the tape on here. Something like that. Oh, there's Doug. The building instruction starts quite well down here, and I'm not going to share it since it's on Chris's site, but there will be a link down in the description so that you... And one thing that's going through these instructions quite much is that all the dimensions are approximate. So you will have to cut it to length and then tune the antenna yourself. And that, of course, applies to any antenna. But it's very clear that there's no simple thing says cut it to exactly this length. But I guess most people wouldn't expect that in a ham radio antenna either. The instructions are a mix of video and photos and text. So you do have to go through this quite carefully. So let's start with this, and we should start by putting on these wire spreaders, and the video here will explain how to do it. I'm of course not going to show you Chris's video. So let's get to this part then. We need a screwdriver, and this is M3 screws with a normal Phillips head, and there's nothing really advanced to do there. I may actually replace these with, if I were to make more of these, I would probably have used hex head instead, but that's just because that's what I have most of around here. And luckily it seems like all of the screws in here are the same length, which always makes things a lot easier. So this is a suitable one for that. So this is pretty simple. The ones that are terminated, they go into the center like so, so that you can get an end stop, and then the ones that are passed through, they will go further out like this, and then rinse and repeat 4 times or 8 times, since there are 2 connectors per one of these. And these are printed so that they have a slight interference fit, so you will actually be threading this slightly when you're pushing it in, but there's also nuts to put on the other side as well, so that they are actually nicely connected. There are no washers supplied, but with ABS prints like this, that is generally not going to be required. This will function pretty much like nylock. That's to some degree at least. So I'm basically just screwing from the one side to the other. Another important thing here is that there's no up or down on this PCB. Apparently not, at least, so you can do whatever you want with them. Everything that needs to be connected can be connected both ways. So when I then have the second one, I'll just gonna start screwing that in here. And of course I won't tighten this fully until I have the part inside it. And then I will tighten it with the nut as well. So there's quite a lot of flex here, so that hopefully, yeah, this one will go in there as it should. Pretty nice design. Of course, you don't have to be patient. You can also just get out the power tools like this and screw it in. Of course, it will be very much easier to over tighten and so on, so you have to be quite careful with what you're doing. But as long as you are careful, it's not a problem. So this, it goes through here nicely. Yep, nice. So let's get all of the other edges on and then get these ones in. I say that this being from a small supplier that's just run from home, this is more than good enough quality from what I expect and for the price as well. So I'm hoping this will be performing quite well. Well, that was all 5 of them. I did forget the small one that goes here in the top. Yep, all 5 are screwed in. So now I'm going to put the spreaders in. These, as I said, are going to be cut down later. And they come 50 centimeters or a bit just under 20 inches long. And they're going to go down to 36. So this is the length. And they're going to be going down roughly here. So it's quite a lot that goes off them. But the recommendation was to do that afterwards. So I will do that. So let's just feed all of this in and get these screwed in properly. And then we can do the trimming later. I may have to do some wiggling here to get things in. In theory, you wouldn't need nuts for this. It's going to hold this quite well, but it's nice to have them there. And I am going to put them on later after I've tuned this off, because I do think I'll probably cut these down, or take them out to cut them down when everything is tuned up. So I'm going to go quite quickly and just tighten up quite rapidly here, and then do the proper tightening later. So this is getting quite big and unwieldy. I'm not sure if this will be a very good thing for mountain hikes and so on, but I'm sure it will fit outside the backpack, unless there are too many brushes and so on there. So that's the main 4 put in, and then I'll just put that one in as well, the top spreader bar. And here there's actually a tiny bit of a defect. The fiberglass is splitting up, so it's good to be mindful there. So I'm just going to put the end cap on so I don't injure myself while I work with this. And then I can take that off afterwards again. Because getting fiberglass splinters in your fingers hurt. I actually got infected that way once. And I had to get a antibiotic thing in my fingers, or injection, because I had fiberglass in there. So this isn't too trivial. Of course, also when you're cutting this, you should wear a mask and all of that, which I will do later. So that is a clear antenna. I'm not sure how well you see that with the parts behind me here. The next step now would be to have a look at the common mode choke, and that has a few components. It has this little spool here, and this spool it is the same both ways. It has a hole there, and some threading here, and this will fit onto one of the spreader bars here on the small one here. So it will be sitting roughly on the top of the antenna here. Chris has a very good video showing how this is made, but I think I'll try to reshoot it here. So you do start by putting one end through and poking that out. So I think there's been some design work in here so you avoid getting a kink in the coax, which would of course be quite bad. And yeah, it is pretty tight in here, but it is a compact design. Like so. And you are gonna leave a bit out. It doesn't say how much, but roughly this is what at least the manual shows. And there's plenty of coax to go around, so there's no need to be stumpy about it. And then you simply go here and you thread it on like so. And this is a nice ABS printed part. Seems nicely built and fits the purpose quite well. Chris does go over some of the specs of the coax, why he's chosen this one and so on, and what specs it has. That's covered over in the manual, but I'm pretty sure he knows what he's talking about when it comes to these antennas. There you go. So then we have a tiny little common mode choke with RG178. Nicely done. So this coil is going to be terminated with this small T-shaped PCB. That will be zip tied on the end here. So I got to uninsulate this coax for now, and then I'm gonna split out the core from the shield and get them soldered on the correct sides here. And Chris shows a really nice way of doing that in the video, not taking any props for that. This is stuff I haven't been doing very much myself, and this is more than long enough, so that's good. So I'm gonna be careful and just try to get this off, and if not, there's plenty of more coax to go around here as well. Of course, the important part here is to not cut through the braid, like so. This is a nice aluminum braid, and we should be able to pull this back slightly here, and might make a little hole there, and then poke it through. So let's find something poking here. One of those. Now we have a nicely split out shield with no broken wires and a center connector as well, which is quite nice. That's going to be my final result for splitting these two, quite a lot. So this will of course be trimmed down, because this will come something like this here and get zip tied on. So I'm gonna put some solder on here. This is this is just my go-to roll here. It's an old roll. It's a 60-40 mix of tin and lead, 250 grams, really nice little roll. Let's see if I can get some pre-tinning on here as well, without ruining everything. Of course, these are just going to be dipole, so it doesn't matter that hugely much if you bridge the two sides. And I am not a soldering expert, to say the least. I generally make things stick together, at least. And while I have this out, I'm also just gonna pre-tin the two outer ones here. So this is just a simple connector for a dipole. And this is basically what it is. It's a folded dipole with a reflector. So this is the finished result with that, minus the zip ties. And this is going to go on here. It slides nicely down on there, and it fits like so. And I'll put a zip tie on loosely now to hold it in place. It's I'll do all the proper tightening and so on when things are decently tuned in. Of course, I do have plenty of other zip ties lying around somewhere. So I think this one wants two zip ties, one on the top and one on the bottom. So now we have something that looks more and more like a proper antenna, and there's plenty of coax around here for the end. The next step then is to connect the BNC, and this BNC is different from the one in the manual. The one in the manual is a screw-in one for a hole that's actually not in these anymore. So this one is more of a normal screw-on one. So the BNC is supposed to be terminated on the underside so that the solder port comes on the same side as these ones. And that's because this is now my up for the antenna. There's going to be a mounting hole here that goes on the underside, which is the one you thread onto your antenna. So this is just 4 small screw holes. For this, it would be nice to have some washers. I don't think it's very critical. This becomes quite a bit unwieldy when it's this size, but well, it will be fine. So one thing that's not in here is that you will need somehow to get this coax or the shield connected onto one of these ones. And since this is, I assume, stainless steel, it's not going to solder on there pretty well. So you'll need some sort of eyelet connector, but that's something I assume most people will have lying around in large enough quantities. So let's measure out the coax and which lengths we need for that, and give it a bit of slack, because if I remember other portable antennas I've had, like the coax, if that's too short or if that breaks off or whatever, you may need to resolder it sometime in the future. And having a few centimeters extra, which is just zip tying down, is going to make your life so much easier compared to rewinding the entire coil. That's just experience based, because these things, they do break when you're out there in the field. Even if you're careful with the gear, something is going to happen. So now I've cut the coax so that it's long enough to go here with some slack, so that I can kind of reassemble it if that's needed in the future. And the braid is separated same way as the other. So I'm just gonna crimp on here. I have a small blue ring connector, so that will be crimped on, and then I'll also solder it on. Slightly too long. Here we go, and a crimper. But just to be sure, I'm gonna drop in a few drops of nice solder there as well. While that heats up, I'll just get this clear off as well. Having the right tools, by the way, is so nice. Although these are not high-end tools, they really do the job, and I've had some of these for quite a few years, and I kind of expect keeping them for a long time as well. For example, having a cable stripper like this, or one of the other types you can get, it's such a nice upgrade compared to using knives and so on, but very much up to what you want to do, of course. So this has a lovely resin smell on it. Let this seep nicely in. That should be it for now. The soldering part. No, it's not. And then let's stab a tiny bit in the center here. And let's get that in here, like so. And that should be it for soldering for now, and I'm gonna let this chill down a tiny bit before I start touching everything, because this one sinks up quite a lot of heat. So let's see where this will fit in then. Doesn't really matter which of them I do. I think that one will be the one. And I have managed to cut this slightly short, but I don't think that should be a big issue. So yeah, this is not ideal. I may rework that a bit later, but for now I'm just gonna leave it as is here. I think I'll probably, when this is nicely settled, I'll probably blob that in with some hot glue just to keep moisture out of everything here. Not that I'll be using this in a lot of rain, but still. It's time to do some wire cutting here. And the guide tells about approximate measurements, which I mentioned before, because, well, every one of these is going to be slightly different, and the ground conditions are going to be different. As with every antenna, you measure once and you cut twice. Maybe it was opposite of that. I don't remember. Never remember that. Anyways, there are some approximate measurements here, and I'm gonna go above that. And there should be plenty of wire for that. If not, I have plenty of soda beams wire. So what you get here is white thin gauge wire. And there's a calculator where you can put in some stuff that's not from Radiostuff, but it's linked there. But I'm just going to go with the suggested ones here and add a tiny bit onto that, maybe a few centimeters. And then I'll see what happens out from that. The first one I'll measure out is the two driven elements, and those go on the antenna from the dipole element here, out like so, and then down somewhere here where it's folded over, and then the same on the other end. The reflector, which goes from there over like this, that's a single wire length. And trimming them is supposed to be quite well, you have to be quite careful with doing it, and the manual tells you how to do it. So I'm gonna give it a try. What he used for the prototype, the one that's used for the manual, is 440 millimeters or 17.5 inch-ish, plus 10 millimeters for folding over. And we use these small brackets here to just fold over the wire and zip tie it in place. So I'm gonna go 50 centimeters to start with and see where we end up. As I said, there's plenty of wire, and I will of course cut these to equal lengths. So let's see, 50 is there. Now I have two nice lengths here of 50 centimeters. Let's just isolate the end of these two so they can be soldered on. And I'm fully expecting this to be something I have to trim down. As I said, this is 5 centimeters longer than what he has, but I'll also probably mount it higher up than what he has based this on, and all of that is going to affect it. There's some talk in here that the antenna performs well when it's 2.5 meters above ground. And if you put it 2 meters above ground or lower, it's going to be behaving quite weirdly. Let's just do some simple pre-tinning here. And then this one. And then these ones are going on each side of the little T I soldered earlier. Doesn't matter which side. And from what I've understood, there's not much mechanical load on here. So that's good. I'm trying to solder these on in right angles so that it flows nicely with how they're mounted. Otherwise, these will probably break off. This is a rather thin gauge wire. I'm also placing it directly on top of the solder pad. I'm not trying to poke it through the hole, and that's also so that I don't get a break in the wire. If this was at some sort of angle, I'm pretty sure this would be breaking off. And that, I think, was all the soldering I need to do for this build. The spreaders, they are pretty simple little devices. There's holes here for the cable to go through, there's a hole for the spreader bar, and then there's a hole for a screw so that you probably clamp this on. There's also a dimension here for how far these should be out, at least in the prototype, and that is at 330 millimeters. I've added quite a lot, so I'll see where I'm going, but I'll just to be sure, or just to be consistent, I'm putting it out there at about 35 centimeters or 14 inches. Yes, 14 inches, roughly. Then we have some screws here that go through into a small nut. These are pretty loose on there, so I'm gonna tighten them up early in the build process and then rather adjust them later, just while we're doing it. And to my knowledge, all of them should be the same length out. Because symmetry is rather important for this antenna build. You can of course just put these screws in at the start and the nut. So that was all of the 4 spreaders mounted out. Let's see if I can drag this through like so. This one goes in here. Yep, that looks pretty nice. These are not equally mounted. So one of these is not correct length. Oh yeah, that was very off. Yep, that looks pretty much right. So what I have now is this antenna with 2 wires dangling off like this. Cut this at 955 millimeters plus 5, just so I have the same. And just follows the dimensions that are there. So here I would have actually appreciated having a bit clearer numbers, especially for a rookie, because you do have a tiny bit of wire left here. Wonder how much that is. So you do have an extra go on one of the legs. So I have 1 meter plus, yeah, so I have roughly 2 meters to spare here. So there's enough to basically make 2 kits of this wire here. So that should be enough for troubleshooting for most people. So the foldback is pretty simple. Of course, you just go in through and then back again through the same hole. And then you secure that with some zip ties. I'm going to use these temporary, or these white ones, for temporary stuff. And I'll use the black ones for proper mounting later. That is one of these just zip tied in place, and let's do the same here. Like so. And like so. That was one. This comes then pretty much in the middle of the span here, so that's pretty nice. Let's quickly rotate this around and do the same on the other side. That's it. And then we bring this over through here. And that is actually slightly too taut, but I did also place these at pretty random lengths here. So I'm going to shorten all of them with roughly a centimeter. I do foresee that I will have to do this quite a few times to make this line up properly. It's not the tightest fit yet, but that will have to be fine-tuned for now. This is the build. And then there's this last bracket to be mounted. It's going in the center here on the same side as the coax. And that is just a small hole for the pole to go through. And this is something I may remake depending on where it fits on my mast. And it's pretty nicely printed. It also has these press fit or heat fit threads in them. And it has 2 small tabs, as you may see here. So this fits perfectly in here on the bottom. And then you just screw it in from the top. And luckily this is the same dimension of screw or hex head that there was for the BNC connector. So there you have it. That is one Moxon, untuned for now. And it will become tuned in the next video. I'm going to leave it for here because this video is going to be long enough already. And I have a feeling tuning this will take quite a while out there, so that will be a separate video. As for the kit, this is a kit I really liked building. It's well worth the money I paid for it. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this is something I paid for myself. It's not a sponsored video, and I just like the stuff that he makes, and I needed something good for 2 meter, and this is much smaller than the Yagi I have now. Although I do believe the 3-element Yagi I have now is better performing than this will be. This is smaller and more practical to carry around, especially when I get these ones snipped off. See you in the next one, and thank you very much for watching. 7-3.